Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Hi, and welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Today we are speaking with Nicole Holst, and Nicole is an intuitive life purposing coach for soul-led entrepreneurs. That sounds exciting. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. And non-entrepreneurs. I used to do a business marketing program, which I still have, but not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. You know, some people want to do other things. So I can work with anybody.
Okay, that's good. Kind of broadens the horizons a little bit for everybody else. So, Nicole, how did you get started? What's your story?
With coaching? Well, the coaching is kind of a combo of all of my different backgrounds that I've had. I always say I've lived multiple lives. I started out as a performer, dancer, choreographer. That's what I went to school for and came to New York and pursued. Then, you know, I was hitting 30 and burnt out and physically exhausted. And I thought, what's the next step? And I moved back home and ended up in the mental health field working with the homeless. And so I learned a lot about, you know, mindset and also our anxiety, right? And how we manage our symptoms when we're not doing well and that kind of thing. And then I ended up reconnecting, I would say, to my spiritual side, because I was always very intuitive. Even as a kid, I had, you know, psychic dreams that would come to me, especially when I was opening my creative side when I lived in New York, and always interested in that other side of, you know, the connectedness of all things. And I got into tarot kind of randomly. An ex-boyfriend sent me a deck, and that kind of really opened me and it brought me into the spiritual community, which has been so amazing for me, and all the positivity and people that really wanted to work on themselves after I worked with, you know, the homeless who didn't always want to do the work. I was suddenly surrounded people that wanted to do the work, right? And so I started seeing the connection between the mind, body, and soul. So I've been a Pilates instructor throughout this whole time for 20 years, and I see that when people have pain, a lot of times it's not just a physical thing, it's an emotional thing, or I've always been fascinated with that psychosomatic connection. And there's a spiritual component of, you know, maybe they feel left out, or like they don't belong, or they've had a loss that they haven't really moved past. Their spirit, right, is kind of trapped. And I've felt like that at different points in my journey, right? So I realized that maybe I had a unique angle, having done a little work in mind, body, and soul professionally, that I could combine kind of all of my experience into this one thing for once and do coaching. And, you know, I looked at how does what I know and what I know the most help other people. And what I realized is it's about alignment, right? Like everything I did, the kind of thread of it all was, if your body's not in alignment, if your mindset's not in alignment with what you want and positive, and if your spirit isn't in alignment with what you're doing, we have a problem somewhere that we're usually feeling in one of those three areas, or all of them, right? And my idea is, if you unite all of those, then you have more fulfillment in your life, you have less stress, less pain, and you're more fulfilled because you're probably following what your soul wants you to do, your purpose. So my mission is always to help people kind of dream bigger than maybe they think is possible even, or get unstuck, or kind of go for that thing that they're really wanting to do, but something's holding them back, either fear, which we all have, or conditioning, or whatever it is. And I use a lot of my life experience to help them see, like, that doesn't have to be your life sentence, right? If you're not happy with where you're at, and you're maybe you're in pain, or maybe you're, you know, suffering mentally stressed all the time. Like that doesn't have to be the way you live the rest of your life, and that we can make intentional choices to be our more authentic self and have more ease and also more magic, I think, in your daily life.
Yeah, that's so true. When you live more intentionally, you can have more control over your life. And it doesn't have to be like super hang on tight. It's got to be this way or no way.
Right.
But it actually living intentionally allows you to have a lot more freedom in
Yeah.
your choices because you know the boundaries that you want to select from. You're more selective, and
Mm-hmm.
in that you can enjoy the things that you're experiencing. It
Yeah.
kind of
And you can,
reminds me of, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say it reminds me of the Japanese with, they're more minimalistic,
Mm-hmm.
and but they really the things that they have are very beautiful and well treasured, and they don't collect junk.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the US we collect junk.
Oh, I actually just posted a thing in my group this week about, because I just went to Africa, which was very eye-opening about, I mean, talk about minimalism and simplicity and living on dirt floors and the community being the most important thing. And there is no stress like we have there, like there's no anxiety, and they have real things to stress about, like lions coming in the middle of the night. And
Right?
it was eye-opening to see, like simplicity. I think we surround ourselves, and I'm like the number one guilty person of being over busy, filling every minute, needing a lot of stuff. And I'm learning the art of simplicity. Like I was looking at your plant back there, like speaking of like Japanese, like the bonsai plants, like what really matters is what we're getting down to. And when we keep ourselves so busy or cluttered, we can't see it. It's like you can't see the forest for the trees. What do we really want? And getting away is a great way to do that, right? Like that trip and made me kind of come back and have like an existential crisis of, oh, you know what? Am I putting my energy where I want to? Is this the way I want to do it? Is this the way I want to run my business? All of that, and so often we can go through life just on default, kind of doing the next best thing or not really thinking and just taking whatever comes, and then we find ourselves in a situation we don't really want to be in one day, going, this is not the life I wanted, right? And then we have a choice to change and reevaluate and take a different way, and like you said, sometimes it's that unknown path, that's going to be the most fulfilling. But if we can let go of the need to control it and say like, well, I have to know how it's going to happen. I've had coaches say to me, you have to be willing to fail. Like if you want to get to where you want to go, like you got to kind of let go of needing to know how it's going to happen and just trust the universe is going to align things. And it always has for me. So I always remind myself of that when I'm in those transition times.
Yeah, it's the stepping out and not knowing if the ground's going to be solid, but the universe always comes by and just like there's ground magically underneath your next step.
Yeah, it's
How it
amazing.
happens, but it always
Yeah.
does.
I don't think we're supposed to, because that's the beauty of the journey is like, we're not supposed to know. If we knew every step that was going to happen for the rest of our lives, it'd be a pretty boring journey, right? We need security so much. And that's a brain, it's wired into our brain chemistry, right? So, but if we could let go, like, I mean, while I was watching animals on the savannah, like they don't know where their next meal is coming from. They're not sitting there stressing about it. They're just trusting their instinct to lead them to the next animal and to lead them, they're just in the moment, and we hardly ever are, right? So if we can learn that and to listen to ourselves in each moment, I think we just have an easier journey.
I think it's one of the hardest things that can be asked of a human being is to just exist in the moment.
That was, I literally
Just
came back with like 3 points, and that was one of them. Like my 3 biggest takeaways. One was simplifying and minimizing. 2 was not being over busy and creating our own stress. And 3 was just being like, every enlightened ascended master, Buddha, like that's the whole point, is just to be. Like we don't have to do anything to prove our worth. Yeah, we got to survive. We've got to do things to pay the bills. But how can we be still and like enjoy, in that contentment in that moment?
and often it's a lot less than we think.
Yeah.
It's like when we look at it, it's like we want to pile all these things onto it. And
Mm-hmm.
then it becomes this big mountain of stuff that needs to be done or accomplished,
Yeah.
and half of it doesn't even have a purpose. It just
Right.
like
Right.
somebody said that's what you're supposed to do, so you go and
Oof.
do it. And and you miss out on like a lot of the joy that would have come if you could just strip it all back to its bare essentials and
And what really
enjoy the
matters.
process. Yeah, what
Yeah,
really matters.
yeah. And that's the self-created part, I think. It's like I came back with a mantra of like, stop making such a big deal out of everything. Like, and that's what creates the stress and anxiety, is that we put pressure behind it, and it has to go, we have to do it this way. And if I don't do this, like, and what does it make it mean about us if I don't do it too? But yeah, I think we put too much pressure on ourselves. We put too much load. I'm very guilty of putting too much on my plate, kind of thing. And I'm now looking at things differently. Like, I even have it written here. How can you do more with less? Right. And that preserves your energy and your peace, and I don't know if that we're taught to do that as part of, especially American society, right? In other
No, they need
countries,
us
they
to
do.
need and want stuff
Hmm.
because that's how the economy has been kept going for so long. But I think in the last few years that there's been a shift.
Hmm.
People are realizing that we don't need all this stuff.
Yeah.
People are living in tiny homes where they
Yep.
have, like 60 or 70 things. And
Yep.
if they bring one thing in, something else has to go because there just isn't space for it.
Yeah.
And
And it clutters your life and your spirit too, right? It's like it keeps you just from focusing on in. And there's a lot of people becoming digital nomads and like getting rid of homes altogether and having the freedom of the road. Or like, you go to other countries, that's why I love to travel and see, like, not everyone does this way. Other cultures, they have cafe culture, right? They sit for hours just having a cup of coffee and let the day just be, instead of feeling the need to run around. I'm in New York and people are running around like crazy, and I teach a stretch class. And when I get a hold of them, I literally tell them, like, stop moving, like, what if we just were still for a minute? Like, and notice how you are uncomfortable with that feeling of just being still, right? And I think when we can get used to that or incorporate that, even in little ways, we give ourselves some peace back, right? And we give ourselves some time to reflect, and we get those intuitive nudges that I think are so important for our journey, because that's the truth of what you're supposed to do. I think, it's so easy to get overwhelmed and inundated with other people and other people's expectations and other people's energy and other people pulling us different directions, or even other things, and it's, at the end of the day, are those aligned to your path or not?
are they really making you happy?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times stuff makes us less happy because we have to take care of the stuff
Mm-hmm.
rather than just enjoying. You can enjoy just nature. You can enjoy just being,
Mm-hmm.
sitting somewhere with like not a lot. And
Just
when you
being
have a
part of the
lot,
universe.
yeah, you tend to have more things that you have to worry about. So tell us how you do your coaching. How does it look when people come to you to get help?
Yeah. Well, my one-on-one coaching program's 3 months. I do 3 sessions a month plus a kickoff call. And I kind of structured it like the phases of a butterfly, because I think it's transformation, right? We're looking, I want to help people cause a transformation in themselves. So the first month I do body, mind, and then soul, because I think each one has something to tell us about what's holding you back. So I actually do like body alignment in the first session, and we talk about what's out of alignment, could be potentially causing pain. It also
Mhm.
helps us rule out if there's pain somewhere that's not explained by your body being out of alignment. It could be a trapped emotion, right? And we talk about, what it looks like when your nervous system is dysregulated and when you feel anxious and overwhelmed, and how that shows up in your body, so we can start to be more conscious. And that comes from my years as applies instructor, something also we can feel, right, physically.
Mhm.
And usually we do know, like, our body's reactions to things. The second session, we talk about mindset and, what are the most negative thoughts you're telling yourself, and where do they come from? And we dig a little deep into how we can rewire those so that when they come up again, especially if they're really deep and old, they're going to keep coming up. How do you deal with them when you come up? And how do you know when it's just your mind lying to you? And how do you know when you should listen to it? And then the soul session is about, I look at the chakras, what's out of balance. Where are you giving out more energy than you're getting back? Like, where can we protect your boundaries more? And then what we find by the end of that first month is they're all related usually. And usually that a problem in one area relates to all three of those things. And it's kind of fascinating to see the connection. but then it makes it a little bit more like you have control over it, right? Like you now know, you're aware of your triggers, you're aware of how they show up, and you know how to deal with them when you do. I give people free resources that they can use forever that are online for that work for them, because everyone's different, right? So that's the first month. I call that like the caterpillar stage, right? Kind of learning to walk again and who we are. And a lot of times we become disconnected from ourselves because of all this stuff we're talking about. We don't know, we don't pay, or we feel it and we disregard it because we got to go run to something, right? And so I find it really rewarding when we can get some kind of power back over that feeling of being out of control of your own body and mind and soul, right? And then the second month we look at like, well, where do you want to be? Now that we know more about you, I have them do a journal exercise of what their real priorities are right now, because they change over time, right? And what do you want your life to look like? Because why create a future based on what you're not going to feel good in, right? And then we look at intuition, which is hard for some people to even hear, or how do you hear your intuition, and what's the difference between your intuition and your mind, so that you can be able to separate those when you need to and say, oh, that's just my fear holding me back. My soul is telling me, do this, do this. And I always tell people, I follow that no matter what. I tell my mind to be quiet and I'm going to follow this. And then we put a plan together of like, what are your goals for the next month? What do you want to focus on? Like for everyone, it's different. So the third month is to me the butterfly month, where you spread your wings and fly. And maybe it's putting yourself out there for your art for the first time, or starting that business, or really putting your energy behind it finally and getting yourself out there. Like I've had one of my clients do, like she's now doing psychic fairs and wellness expos. And before, she was kind of overwhelmed because she was a mom of 3. And she's like, I don't know how to, I have my passion, but it's kind of on the back burner, and we kind of brought it forward and talked about all that, those feelings of guilt and selfishness that come from doing what you want when you have, other people that you're responsible for, right? And then there's people that just want to feel better or reduce their stress so that their body's not hurting so much and not be, dreading going to work every day. And we work through that, and I check in with them, in those sessions, and make sure they're moving forward and not slipping back into those old patterns. And they've had some amazing I've witnessed the transformation now, and it's pretty inspiring to me to see. Like, I think of it as so brave when you're willing to do that inner work, because I think when you do that inner work is when that magic comes in, because the universe rewards it. I think like you're following what the universe is asking you to do. They're going to bring in those things. And it's always happened to me over and over. No matter how many times I've transformed my life, it just keeps surprising me with the opportunities and people it presents to me. And I know they were meant to be there. You can just tell, when you have those, like I was meant to have that opportunity or that friend, that supports me. And so that's kind of what it looks like. And by the end of the 3 months, it's, you have a whole different life and you've healed a lot of your trauma. You're confident making your own decisions. And I think forever changed how you look at what you, like you said, you choose in your future, and you choose things differently, right? And you choose them more aligned to you. And so I think that puts you on a path to fulfillment is my goal, right? So, and I have a lot of fun working with my clients, because we have, it's deep work, but we can also have laughs and share synchronicities. And I love when they send me emails on the side and say, oh, what we talked about? Look what just showed up today. And it was like exactly what we were talking about, right? So I think it's just little confirmations that they're doing the right work,
I love that. I love that so much for people. And it's so amazing to me how fast a transformation can happen.
Oh, yeah.
It all starts with the decision.
That's what I say. It's like, all you need is like the desire to have something different. I think that's where it starts. And then all you got to do is take the next step. And like the next step could just be reaching out to me, and I'll tell you what I do. And if it's aligned to what you need, I'm happy to help. I don't pressure people, because I think the right people find me anyway that need me, right? Mm-hmm. Or are aligned to me and want to do it my way, right? But yeah, I think it's amazing that people are willing to take that journey and trust me with it. I think of it as an honor, because it's, a lot of times we have a lot to unpack from our childhood, from, what we've lived so far. And I think it's so rewarding when we can let some of that go and just invite in easier, more fun, adventurous energy back in,
Yeah. And it is a process of just letting go.
Mm-hmm.
It's not we hang on to things,
Oh,
and by hanging on to, I mean, we like give it space in our head, in our thoughts. We mull over things that just,
don't serve
move
us anymore.
on. It's
Yeah.
not going to serve you. There's not a
Yeah.
thing you can do about it. It's just, it is what it was.
Yep.
You're not changing that. The only thing you can change is what happens next.
Right.
And instead of, it's so easy to get stuck in the what happened before, like
Oh
looking
yeah.
in the rear view mirror
Yep.
and missing what's in front of you.
Yeah. Or
Because,
you can be stuck in the future too. That's my more, I'm a little like future minded always. I'm a very
Mhm.
fast paced person, and I can get stuck in the future too, thinking, and not being in the moment again, and both of those,
Uh-huh.
I always say like worry, regret, all of that. A lot of that is rooted in the past. Right. And then anxiety, um, fear of the unknown is a little bit rooted in the future, right? And we're never
Mhm.
here now, where there are no worries. Like I love the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and he talks about if a rhino is not charging at you, you really don't have anything to worry about in this moment. Because if you're
Right.
worrying, you're probably in another moment right now, right? So yeah. And
And
I think
if you're going to have that other moment experience, you may as well make it an experience that you really want to have and
yeah.
feel that emotion so you can get to that moment.
And that's the choice that we have. We have free will. So we have the power to make ourselves miserable, and we have the power to dream. And I can catch myself still in those negative moments and go, they don't really serve me. They just attract more of what it is, right? I do believe in law of attraction. And I've learned in my journey that, some of my lowest points, the only thing I had the control over was my mind. And I could choose in that moment, do I want to be hopeful or do I want to be depressed, And when I chose hopeful and just imagined a better future, it actually eventually came, even as specific as I was. And so I know there's something to the power of your thoughts and attraction, because it's happening many times in very specific ways, And I think we have to allow ourselves to daydream. We have to create time for that. We have to, that time of being alone. Like when I was on vacation, I got to be alone on this beach. It was like being in Gilligan's Island, and I happened to pick up a book a client gave me, and it was called Gift from the Sea, and it looked just like what I was looking at. And I'm like, okay. And it was exactly talking about what we're talking about how we're not okay with just being, and that's actually the spiritual path. Like the enlightened masters, I've gotten to a point where they've shed their ego so completely that they can just be, and then it's about love and compassion. And that's really it. I think that's the point to life and to growing. And, we may never get to that level, but we can aspire to be at a better level than we're at now, where things don't bother us quite as much, and we don't take things so personally, and we don't just dwell, and we instead look at like, what was the lesson in that thing I went through, and it becomes a positive thing.
And being able to just have, when I'm thinking about the love, just in love and acceptance, but it's not the kind of love where you're constantly doing for other people, that I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes we're taught love is helping other people or making their lives easier and self-sacrifice. But
Yes.
there's a kind of love where you you experience it and you share it just by the fact that you are a peaceful person,
Mm,
and you give that energy out to the people that are around you.
mm-hmm.
When you're talking about monks and
Exactly.
Buddha
Yeah.
and people like that, I think it's that peace that we call peace, that is the love that they share by allowing those that are in their periphery to experience what it feels like to slow down enough
Mm-hmm.
to
That
just exist.
I got chills when you said that, because I just watched this on Netflix called The Art of Joy. And it's about the Dalai Lama and Bishop Desmond Tutu and their friendship, and how cute and playful it is. And you think of them as such serious spiritual people, but they have a fun and lighthearted energy. And it's because when they start talking about their life journeys, Dalai Lama had to leave his country at age 24, and he became a refugee. And he said, I think that was my path though. Like, as sad as I was to leave, I got to experience the world. I got to put my message out there. I got to meet amazing people. And he makes this unlikely friendship with a South African guy who's gone through apartheid and, seen the worst of humanity. And they were probably the most hopeful people you've ever seen. but they had such inner peace, right? Because they had gone through so much and realized I rather choose joy, and not because they hadn't seen, you think of them as maybe they never actually suffered. No, they suffered a lot, but they realized like, this is where it feels better, and Archbishop Desmond Tutu said he starts every day and prioritizes every day his alone time to connect to himself and meditate and pray, because otherwise, how would I lead people? How would I speak about what's important if I don't know who I am and what's important to me and what I'm hearing, and I think that's a lesson for all of us. And you can see like their being is so at peace. And they talked about dying and what they would think about when they died. And they would think about their friendship and their times together and what they did in the world. And that's the love you're talking about. It's like they just exist in peace and they're an example of it. And most people don't have that inner peace now because we're spun around by society in so many ways that aren't us, And I think our challenge is to get back to that core of who we are in such a distracting, in Africa, I could see how it's easy to be at peace because it's simple. It's, not overcomplicated. And yet they don't have the infrastructure we have and the ease we have and the leisure and we have a lot of creature comfort and trappings, but a lot of times those can be confining, like you said, you're slaving away to your mortgage, you're doing a million things in society, you got a doctor's appointment, so I think our challenge and my focus is sort of like, how do we live in an unnatural world and still stay connected to our natural self, right? And maybe reconnect. And it may be a process where you're constantly realizing when you're going away from yourself, and when you know yourself, you can pull yourself back in and stay grounded,
Yeah, because, Desmond Tutu and that's who we're
Dalai
talking about.
Lama, yeah,
And the
him and
Dalai Lama. They too have to deal in the real world.
Yeah.
They have things that happen in their lives, but they've trained themselves to just move through it differently.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't realize that, I think of monks as almost like yogic, where they exist not thinking, right? Or like getting out of their body and mind. And what he said was actually like sahaja is a form of meditation that's Indian, but that's a Buddhist philosophy about training your mind. And I didn't think of it as so active. Like I thought of it as we want to release, and they're like, no, we actively train our mind to focus on the positive, and we actively realize when we are being negative, and they do certain tasks throughout the day to keep them that way, right? So they part of their day is giving to others, part of the day is chores, because he said that distracts the mind, and busy is good, idle hands are not, right? And they have things they do that are completely designed to keep their mind in the right vibration, right? So it's a very active process. And that was eye-opening because, what I'm doing is similar. It's how to be actively aware of, am I telling myself a negative thought? And if so, we know what that's going to get us. We don't attract well when we're thinking negative. We get more of it as proof, until we recognize it and change the pattern. And I think a lot of what I do is pattern changing and helping people to be aware in a compassionate way. And, people will tell me I nudge them when they need it. And I'm, also can be empathetic and compassionate to what they've gone through, having seen a lot I've worked with the homeless and I've worked with people on Fifth Avenue, and everyone has struggles, and everyone that struggles has different response to it, and it's based on their experience. And sometimes we need to work on our response to it, right? And have a better feeling response, because triggers will always happen, right? So, but I've learned that you can let them affect you less. You can not take things as personally, and you can not do it to yourself, because mostly we do it to ourselves, right?
Yeah, for sure we do it to ourselves, and often than not. It's just with our thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, most of the time your friends aren't going around saying, you suck, you're not good at this, right? We say that to ourselves though, all day long sometimes, right?
Yeah. And why did you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know why I did that.
Yeah.
And
Default
I don't have
mode,
to justify
right?
it to myself.
Yeah. And like you said, the words supposed to and should are always red flags to me, because that usually tells me someone taught you to believe that you should do that, right? Like somewhere along the way you learned this is who you're supposed to be, but that might not be the truth of who you are. How do you know the truth of who you are? Going within, asking yourself, and then trusting the answer you get. And then the only way I think you trust that is by testing it, right? You go out, you you take a step based on that intuition, you see what comes. But when you start seeing magic coming, then you're like, you know what, maybe that soul was right. Maybe my soul knew the answer more than my mind did. And then I've now seen so much proof of that I can't doubt it. Do I still have a hang up sometimes though? Yeah. And I get called out on it too. So, I like that though, because that holds me accountable. And if I can do that for other people, then I'm happy.
You got to be a little bit brave, because it can be scary to exercise the thought that you could be a totally different person than the person you've been all this time up to now.
Yeah.
Having these thoughts that don't serve you, and having your body out of alignment, and having your soul kind of crushed and put in a little box,
Yeah.
hidden away,
Yeah.
because it doesn't conform to the thing or the being that you were supposed to be
Yeah. And
embodying.
a lot of times those things seem so separate to us. Like, when we feel like our life's falling apart and we're like, my body hurts and I feel depressed and I also just feel alone or whatever, they could seem like separate issues. And when you look at a soul perspective, they're usually the same issue, right? And it always comes back from being disconnected from the self. Because when you're connected to yourself, you never feel alone or confused or like you're making the wrong choice, right? And I can feel that fear and do it anyway now. I think if anything, that's what I did all along. Like, it wasn't ever that I didn't feel fear when I took that risk, followed that dream. It's just that my fear of regret was bigger than my fear of whatever that thing was. And I do think that there's, and remember, that Marianne Williamson quote that says, like, we're more afraid of our endless potential than we are of anything else. I never understood that. But I started talking to clients that, they are afraid to hope and to put their dream out there, because then what if it fails? Now they have nothing. But I'm like, but what did you have before? You had this, yeah. But so we might as well go for it. And I've had people tell me, you got to risk failure. I don't like to fail. I like to be a perfectionist and control things. I produce shows, where control everything about it as much as I could, and thought of everything down the road that could go wrong and tried to prevent it. But then at the end of the day, it could be something I least expect, a blizzard, something I can't control, that totally, and the only thing we can do is trust ourselves to be adaptable. And when you learn these skills, though, of how to train your mind, how to listen to your intuition, how to deal with your triggers, you are adaptable and you can handle those ups and downs on the journey and still get to where you want to go without feeling completely destroyed when one little thing happens that's not the way you wanted it, And so I think that's a superpower. And if I can make people more bulletproof that way, by teaching them what's worked for me, because I don't teach people anything that I didn't try, and that didn't work, and they're all organic and free and holistic. So, if it's things that you can always use, like my goal is to make them so hyper independent and trusting in themselves that after me and for the rest of their life, they know they can count on themselves, and that's a lost skill, I think.
I think so too. And just having the skills to be able to recover when those things happen to us. And, life does happen. There are ups and downs. It would be pretty boring, honestly, if it didn't. But knowing how to navigate the ups and downs makes life infinitely less stressful.
Yeah. And you're right. People can get stuck. Like, people can get stuck in an event, right? Like, their energy is still back in someone that passed away, or a breakup that happened, or opportunity that didn't work out. And they might not even know that part of their soul is still stuck somewhere that the rest of them has moved on from. Right. And sometimes we have to go back and in other cultures, they call it like soul retrieval, shamans call it, like, where you have to go get back that lost part of yourself, or even I've heard like hearts work, childhood, inner child work. It's like that part of yourself that didn't get their needs met, maybe when you're growing up, or that thing that didn't get fulfilled. Like, I don't ever think it's too late. I think we're given infinite time. Only in our human mind do we think there's limited time, or it's too late for me, or it didn't happen by now, it's never going to happen. I've, like I said, reinvented myself so many times that I know that at any point we can choose, but we have to make that choice, right?
It's kind of exciting that we can reinvent ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So how do people get in touch with you if they want to work with you more, Nicole?
So the easiest way is just my website, followyoursoulpath.com. You can book a tarot reading on there if you want to get in touch with your intuition. I do a little bit of intuition coaching with that. You can read more about my 3-month program, which is called Align and Attract, 3 months to live your truth and fulfill your potential. And you can book a free call about that and just ask me anything to see if it's a good fit for you. And we can talk about what you're struggling with and if I think I'd be able to help you. And then I also have a free Facebook group that's like a supportive spiritual community that you can get to also from my website, but that's also called Follow Your Soul Path, private group. And I do free weekly readings in there, which is fun for me because I get to connect to the community, and I'll pull a card for you if you show up in the chat and maybe you need a little direction that week kind of thing. And we do a lot
of really fun.
It is really fun. And like we have fun in the group, and we also do like free monthly self-care workshops that different people in the group lead. So it's not just me. Like I like to bring other modalities to people that maybe they haven't tried or heard of that could help them with some of those things. I think our next one's going to be about anxiety and trauma healing, and from a therapist who's very trauma informed, and who also just took a big leap of faith to move to London. So there's a lot of good examples of people in the group posting their stories too of, you know, how they're taking the leap and how they're working on their stuff. And so I think it's helpful to be a part of that community. And I'm looking into doing maybe some group coaching, monthly membership type thing, just to keep that community going. People can talk to each other and get feedback, you know?
Community is where the magic happens every time.
Right.
Yeah. Just like you meet people that you might not have ever met in a normal walk of life.
Yeah.
But because you join these communities, you make friends that you just keep with you forever.
Yeah, it's so cool. And that, you know, they inspire you and they keep you going and they help you when it's those tough times. I definitely have like my spiritual friends I call on, you know, and we help each other, and we're not meant to do this alone, you know, and some people don't have someone like that. Like that's where I think the coaching can be helpful, or maybe you want someone objective that's not part of your normal circle. But if you want to make, you know, friends in a positive environment, I love connecting people. So I'm happy when people make their own, you know, kind of friendships in that group from across the world, you know, amazing.
Exactly. So what's the one thing you'd like to leave the audience with today?
Oh, there's so many things, right? But I want to say my theme of this week, because it's a new moon today too, is how can we invite more space, like you said, to be still, and to give ourselves a break? And where are we maybe stressing where we don't need to? Like how can we really look at what we're doing and make it easier for ourselves? Just something to think about for the week. There's probably places where we can open space for ourselves, where we can take a minute for ourselves, or a lot of people decluttering the house. And and I say always, the universe loves a vacuum. So maybe I'll leave with that thought, and not an actual physical vacuum, but like a vacuum of space. You know, you clean out your closet, and now maybe you're making room for a new partner to come in. You know, the universe will fill it with something better when you open yourself to the possibility of more.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the You World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the You World Order, or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.